Yeah.
Talking about Tottenham players. Not that we're not going to dominate this by any means with Tottenham players, but I think it links quite nicely into you, Craig. And going back to kind of when you first come down here and some of the antics you may or may not have got up to. Where you was working at one stage was probably one of the most notorious hanging joints for West Ham, Tottenham, and maybe sort of some of the other London clubs footballers. What was that like initially when you first come down, sort of seeing these sort of players, and how did that sort of develop? I think that was it might have been a bit of a weird one. Start off with seeing these players in a different environment, and then did you kind of latch onto that maybe to kind of drum up some more business for the bar, or was that was that a vested interest of yours to do that?
Yeah, 100%. Don't get me wrong, obviously, even the bar, it was always going to be. It was advertised well, and just we had the West Ham boys in one booth, we had the Spurs boys in another.
On the phone.
This is real life.
How are we doing, Ray?
Literally, I think B had one job, and that was to look after the little one, and now she's here. Do you want to say hello? Go on then, say hello.
Morning.
Who's your favourite football team? Who's your favourite football team? All right, she's off now.
Tottenham.
All right, she's off. No chance. No chance.
Yeah.
Sorry, gents.
Go back, Glenn. I think at the time, Aaron Lennon, obviously being a lead, doing Carl Walkers, your northern lads who I instantly got on well with at the time. Your Nolans, Andy Carroll's at the West Ham doing, and then your Matty Everingtons doing that. They're week in, week out. They're in this bar, and I can't remember the Spurs manager at the time. Used to come down and spy. Going back a few managers now, but it was just no. I think I might have just been before you was in now and again, but they weren't in charge long. I think he's South American.
One day Ramos.
Ramos? Was it Ramos?
Yeah, Ramos.
Down one, stand at the end of the bar, and all the other players were out the back door as quick as possible, you know. But it was an era. They'd pop up during. They'd have a table during. Let's say I mentioned Aaron Lennon, your Carl Walkers. They'd bring in your Matty Dawson. Yeah, it was good for business. Off the back of that, you'd end up hanging around and going out to the other clubs in the area. It was a good era.
Yeah, I mean, going out around that sort of time as well, it was you'd always see. I don't know whether it's the case anymore, but you'd always see those sort of players out and around bars and around clubs and around out until all sorts of hours. As I say, I don't know whether, I was thinking this the other day, whether that's still the same, not during lockdown, obviously, or maybe even during lockdown, but I don't know whether they would be going to more private sort of members bars and clubs as opposed to out with the public as we speak now, because it's developed on even from them. They were superstars then, but I think that with mobile phones, I mean, the camera phones were only just coming out at that stage. But I think there'd be you'd have all sorts of pictures everywhere every single weekend if that was the case. So I think it'd be more a case of, I mean, one time I got a friend of mine who used to play for Rangers, and who's coming on the show one week, and we went out with him once to a bar in Glasgow called the Sugar Cube. But before then, we went to a private members club, and it was £2,000 a month to be a member of this private members club, and it was all the Rangers hierarchy, and it was all the Celtic guys, and they all used to mix together. And I walked in and went up the bar straight away. I went to get a drink, got shooed away because Walter Smith was up there, and Walter Smith to that sort of place and that sort of area is like the Alex Ferguson. He's like the god around that sort of way. But it was all a private members club, and I really, really do think that that's kind of the way now that they may be going. I do get an inkling as well that maybe some of the politicians are utilising that sort of place for sort of their socialising during lockdowns and stuff. That's a bit of a suspicion of mine, but I don't know whether you agree, because I can't imagine all the politicians are plotted up in their houses.
I think the footballers now, it's a little bit different. Not that they weren't, all about fitness and looking after themselves then, because I think even if you go back further than that, in the 60s and 70s, you'd be able to sit in your local pub and the footballers would walk in, you'd have a drink with them. I was told, obviously I weren't alive then, but it was the thing. Everyone my dad's age all said they had a drink with Bobby Moore, they've had a drink with this person. I think now, or before in that era, especially, it was quite normal to go out and you'd see a footballer on a night out, whether it be New Bar, Faces, or whatever. I think now, with camera phones and with the whole athleticism of being at the top of your game, I think it's very rare to see footballers out drinking as much as they did used to. I'm sure they have their private parties. I mean, you've touched upon some of the players there. Carl Walker, he gets pulled over every week for having a private party. But the point I'm trying to make is now seeing those types of people on the socials is very different. You're not going to go into a bar and see a group of footballers on a Saturday night these days, because if they've been playing away, they tend to travel back as a team, or if they are playing at home, they do tend to stay more local. So I don't know. What do you think, Priya? From a footballer's point of view, do you think the socialising side is as important these days?
I think you guys will probably a little bit. It's good. They've got that image out there that it's not happening, but a lot of the younger players are still out.
I'm sure it's happening. Yeah.
They're into these a lot of these Mayfair clubs, and without naming them, giving any publicity, they're not paying us for it, so I'm not going to name names of clubs or anything like that. But they're there on their private tables, and a lot of the times, unfortunately for some of the club owners and stuff, they got in trouble with that because they wouldn't let certain sets of footballers into their clubs. When they see a certain group of ethnicity coming into the club, they were saying, no, we're not going to let them in, which isn't right either, because not everyone is, the same.
You mentioned a nightclub earlier. I don't know if you want to mention the name again, but that particular one that I went to. I went to District once, and on one table you had the Swansea boys. So they must have been playing in London at the time. I don't know who they were playing. So you had a group of all the Swansea players over there, and then to the right you had the Aston Villa boys. They weren't playing each other, but you had the Aston Villa boys over there, and it was just and we was in the middle, group of boys from Essex, and then literally you won't believe how much they interact as players. They obviously they know a lot of the same circles and the same players. But yeah, I mean, I'm not naive enough to think it doesn't happen. I think the point I was just trying to make is they don't go to the local pubs and bars as much as they used to for that reason. But I remember, you're going to get idiots that kick off over stupid things, but I just feel like it is going down that more private route down.
Yeah.
And that's happened since those New Bar days, if you like, when you could go out and you could bump in and rub shoulders with the team 2 hours after a game had just finished.
Yeah,
well,
that would be the annoying point, wouldn't it?
I was set
Definitely
up by
right, boys.
one of the managers at District. We took out our team, like the OC team, for their Christmas meal and the night out, which that was our night out. Once a year, we'd take the team out to a meal and then a club afterwards, all on the company. And that year was District, and we went into the restaurant bit, and they set us up right next to the whole Arsenal squad, just to wind me up, sort of thing. No, but look, again, there's some great stories from that night. Some that I will discuss, and some that I won't, because just it's not my interest to be.
There was one involving Mesut Ozil, wasn't there? I seem to remember, but I think that's not for. Actually, we might moving forward. We might have to mention that because he's in Turkey now. So
yeah, no, we know. I know his agents, and we know them quite well, and I've spoken to them about it, what happened that night, and just yeah, it was interesting, mate. I should have stood up.
Yeah. Yeah, it might be for another day. Maybe we'll do a drinking pod or drinking video, and
That'll be
loose lips might sink some ships.
Yeah, that'll be a special, mate. That
Yeah.
we could have a whole episode on. But that night as well, it was like the Christmas day, so the Arsenal boys were there. I think it was Santi Cazzola's birthday that day. They celebrated that. So the whole squad of them were there. I think that same day, some of the lower league teams were down in the club. I know Millwall was there because I know Ricardo Fuller at the time was playing for them, and remember speaking to him because we've got some mutual friends, and just a whole load of different clubs are there and teams are there. And you spoke about Ozil. For a lot of Arsenal fans at that time, he was like a god for them. And you see players of the lower league teams are trying to go up to him and talk to him, and he wasn't having none of it, mate. He wasn't having none of it. So look, it probably tells you a little bit how my story goes later on, whenever we do talk about it, or even off record or whatever. But yeah, no, look, it still happened.